get us going. Good afternoon, everybody, and we are back for the Site Coordinator Bootcamp webinar, and we are at week number 5. So congratulations for making it to week number 5. And the course that we're going to be working on today and enhancing is data tracking and reporting. I hope that you've had a chance to complete the course that we've scheduled for this week already. And so you know that we've already set up a group on Yammer, and we welcome your feedback and encourage you to continue these discussions that we're having in the webinars there. If you don't already know, I assume that you all are getting to know me. I've been getting your emails, and we've been chatting outside of the time for the sessions. My name is Sarad Davenport, and alert, I have a new title. My new title is Senior Program Manager as a part of the Student Supports Department in the Practice Innovation Team. Please remember that you can feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns that you may have as you progress through these sessions. We only have another week left. We have one more week left, so any questions you have, feel free to reach out to me. Also, keep in mind that these sessions are being recorded. That's partly a reminder to me to hit record, but we already did that, so we're good. And you can access them later. I know a couple of you have sent me an email saying that you weren't able to make a session, so you can access them later, actually on CISU. So if you go to the Site Coordinator Learning Pathway Bootcamp, you go to the bottom of the page, all of the recordings are there. So if you need to catch up, please do so. With regards to continuing education units or credits that you may need, please be sure to check with your licensing board to confirm that they will accept International Association for Continuing Education and Training, also known as IACET CEUs, and to find out what additional supporting information that may be necessary so that you can get the proper credit that you need for your licensing board. The CISU Bootcamp schedule was sent to you via calendar, and I've been kind of sending you updates every week through email. And if you have any difficulties accessing CISU, please reach out to cisu@cisnet.org, and Ernestine Peterson will be more than happy to assist you with any issues that you're having. Also, when you are reviewing a course, please note that there is a pre-test at the beginning of each course and a post-test at the end of each course, and it's mandatory that you take both of these in order to receive full credit and receive your certificate of achievement. I took the time about a year ago to complete my boot camp, well, the learning pathway for site coordinators, and I have my certificate, and I can tell you that, you know, it's important that you go ahead and complete the courses, the pre-test, post-test, so you can get your certificate, because I'll make sure you get your credit for doing all of this work. To continuously improve these courses and offerings, we ask that you mail your thoughts to cisu@cisnet.org. We want to continue to produce good content for you, so let us know how we can make them better. Also, keep in mind that you will be reached out to by someone from our Insights and Innovation team, or even somebody from our team about 90 days after the boot camp to complete a survey about your experience and the application of the knowledge that you acquired during the process of this boot camp. So keep that in mind, that we'll be reaching back out, and when you finish the boot camp, it's not necessarily over, and we still want to hear from you. The national office has made a commitment to create this online learning system that provides this advanced professional training for you as a part of the CIS network. So this is part of our value that we're giving out to the network. And these position learning pathways, like the Site Coordinator Learning Pathway, hopefully will help you to have some common information with those who are throughout the country, and ensure that all of us with CIS speak a common language and have access to the same information. As you'll note on the slide that's up, you are muted upon entry. The group continues to grow, so you are muted. So just wanted to let you know that if you have any questions or comments, please put them into the chat box so that we can make sure that we address any questions or comments that you may have. let's see. Now we're going to go and we're going to, look to our subject matter experts to go into a deep dive. I'm going to turn the video on now so that you can get ready to turn things over to our subject matter experts to get us started today. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about data, but their specific title that they have today is Using Data Reports to Inform Student Supports and Programming. And we're looking forward for them to unpack that for us today. That's me. This is our webinar schedule. Like I said before, we're in week 5. So one more week. Hooray, you're doing a great job. But our speakers today, some of you may already know these people and you've heard from them and you've seen them with the work that they're doing around SysDem and the network, but I want to introduce them. We have Gretchen O'Sullivan, and she's the Director of Data Quality. She's going to be with us today and sharing. And we also have Donique Reed, and she's the Manager of Data Quality. And her name is not Dominique. Her name is Donique. No.
A common misconception.
Right. Common mistake. So we're going to make sure that's clear up front today. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to get out of the way per se, and I'm going to turn it over to our speakers for today. I want to pass the ball to Donique, and she's going to lead us in our session today. Feel free to enter questions, comments into the chat box, and I'll be standing by to support you in it. It's all yours.
It sounds like we may have some people who are having trouble hearing. I don't know if anybody has figured out if they're logged in properly and called in on the phone or through their computer.
They say they can't hear. A few people say they can't hear.
Did anybody, sorry, I'm trying to take this over. Did anybody dial in through your computer that can hear us?
Oh. I'm not sure. It's not. We can hear.
We can hear
you.
people talking. I'm not sure.
Yep. So this is what we'll do. For those of you who are having trouble hearing, we're going to remain confident that on our end the audio is strong. Did a few tests already, and what we're going to recommend that you do is to go to your top toolbar and go to the audio. There's a line that says audio, and to click that and to check your connections. And if you're able to hear us through your connections there, then it should fix it. And if not, then there may be something wrong with your audio connections. But we're going to continue to move forward. And as another way of entering, you could use your phone and call in that way. Sometimes that's a more secure way to get into the webinar, audio, as opposed to using your computer. I know there's been some trouble with folks trying to attend via headset. So kind of a landline might be another option to access the audio. But in the meantime, I would ask that you select on the toolbar the menu item that says audio and then test your connection. Keep in mind, I know if you can hear us sporadically, I'm not sure if you can hear us at all, but this is being recorded. So we're recording this session, and it will be available later if you aren't able to hear it right now or hear it all the way clear right now. So we're going to continue moving forward, and I'm going to turn it back over to our speakers.
So you can see our agenda does have that gray box in the middle of the agenda. But we want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of data, and not just for affiliates and funders, but for everyone, including site coordinators. We'll talk a little bit about SysDem 2.0 and the things that we changed this past year, and then really focus mostly on reports and what might be useful to you all as site coordinators to be able to support your students. Great, so the importance of data. You're probably aware that affiliates and state offices and the national office use data about our CIS students in schools to report information to funders, both potential funders and existing funders, and for other purposes, advocating with local legislatures and things like that. But obviously, as site coordinators, you are really focused more on a local level on your students. So we want to kind of talk about how data is still important to you kind of on a daily basis with the work with your students, and then also talking about your work with principals and your affiliate. So some of the questions you might be considering throughout the school year are, have the students and the school as a whole received the supports that I planned at the beginning of the year? How many students did I say I was going to case manage, and how many students are on my caseload? How many hours of support is each student receiving, and how frequently? Does that differ between students that have a high intensity level for case management or a moderate case management intensity level? In addition to direct service to students, how much time do I spend coordinating events and partner relationships and volunteers? And at the end of the year, you might want to know how many case managed students met their goals, how many graduated or dropped out, those sorts of things. So really, data are important for you as a site coordinator to be able to provide and broker the most effective services to your students. And monitoring this information should be done pretty frequently in order to make the needed adjustments to what you're doing for your own best practices when it's going to be useful to the student. So even though you're taking in data all the time as you meet with students and kind of go about your business, those of you with social work backgrounds know that if you don't document something, it didn't happen. So for that reason, we provide SYSDM to everyone in our network as a tool for documenting and processing this information. So what's new in SYSDM? For those of you who are brand new, then SYSDM is just new, so this might not be as interesting to you. But for people who used SYSDM last year, which was the first year that we rolled out this enhanced data system, a little bit different than our previous system, we made a number of adjustments and tried to really improve it this summer based on feedback from data administrators and site coordinators. So a lot of the workflows that we had, we made them shorter, we streamlined them. And two main features that we just wanted to briefly mention to remind people of is the kind of batch features that weren't as available last year. We have batch enrollment and exit, and then also the ability to edit and delete in batch more effectively. And also the school and student needs assessments and plans have a copy and edit feature, so you don't have to start all the way from scratch again if you already served the student last year. So those are two nice, I think, very good features that we have. And there's a number of planned enhancements for the rest of the year, next summer, that kind of thing. But as we have the information on when things will be updated, we, of course, will let your data administrators know, and they can pass on the relevant information to you. And then just one quick plug for metric data baselines and targets before we kind of move into talking about student goals. Sometimes people struggle with the best way to set a baseline and what to put as a target. So I will defer to your local leadership and encourage you to have conversations with your affiliates to make sure that everybody's kind of tracking this information locally in a consistent way so that all the site coordinators are using the same parameters. But just keep in mind that the baselines should be from the last school year or the last kind of point in time before a student comes onto your caseload. Where was he starting in terms of GPA or number of suspensions or something like that. And then the target's going to be where we need him to be, would like him to be at the end of this school year. So it might differ based on the different students, where they're kind of coming from. Some of them may be pretty standard. You'll set a similar target for each one. But please do have those conversations at the local level so that everything's nice and consistent and clean.
Can you talk about, I'm going to interrupt here. Can you talk about why it's important to think about baselines and targets, even for the site coordinator to be thinking about that? Why?
Why? Well, it's similar to the pre and post tests that you must be taking for your site coordinator learning pathways to really see the impact that, for that example, a course has on your learning. And for this example, what impact are you as a site coordinator and the supports that you're brokering having on student achievement? So if we don't know where she started from, then is 1.5 as a GPA really good, really bad, kind of average? So kind of making sure that we know where your students come from and where they get to. And then also even the targets. By the end of the year, you might be able to tell if a target was maybe a little too high or a little too low, and if most of your students are able to achieve something else. So all of this data can kind of be used throughout your process, not even within one school year, but then over time too, to more effectively work with your students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into gathering the data. So we definitely have an understanding of the importance of the data, and as site coordinators, we're consistently monitoring progress towards students' progress towards their goals, and making sure that we are modifying where necessary so that students can reach the goals that we've set for them. And so we wanted to dive into 3 different data resources, which is a combination of summaries and reports. So we'll be looking at the metric tracking towards student goals summary, the student support detail report, and then the tier 2 and 3 supports by provider. And then we'll walk through where each of these are in SISM and then some of the data that we can gather from each of these.
I have a follow-up question later, but I'll.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to kind of frame this as like connecting the dots. So we're going to walk through an example where we'll look at student progress within a goal area, then kind of identify what are the hours, the number of hours and the types of supports that we're providing to support that goal, and then evaluating the student participation by support to see, based on where they are they getting the supports that they need. So each of you will be able to access the reports and summary dashboard under the site coordinator role. There's a little wrench at the top of the screen, which will take you to the reporting dashboard. And this first section of the report or of the dashboard includes a series of reports, and then everything below that we call summaries. So the first summary that we're going to dive into is the metric tracking towards student goals. Once you launch the screen, you can we're going to run the report for 2017-18, so you would select the school year, verify that you have the correct affiliate, and then the school is a drop-down. So you should be able to see each of the schools that you're assigned to, and then to select the school that you'd like to run the report for. So in this example, we're going to run the report for CIS Provider Elementary. And then on the Excel export, we should get all of these fields that are visible here on the screen. So to run the export, I feel like I'm pointing at a screen, like you guys can see my screen. But
it's okay.
So forgive me. But so from the teardrop, once you click the teardrop, there will be an option to export, and then so you click that, and then it will export the data into Excel format. So once you export the data, you'll be able to see here all of the students. You'll see their baselines and their targets and any progress that they're making towards their targets. The spreadsheet right now that you're looking at is filtered to look only at attendance goals, so that's what we're going to focus on here. And so the first student that we have at the top is Petunia Test, and she has an attendance rate goal set and a baseline of 82.22%. and then a target of 90%. And based on her last 2 progress entries, we can see that her latest progress is set as declined. So,
very good job. It looks pretty bad.
Yes.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this is just a clarifying question. So the site coordinator, in order to really be able to utilize the system to really help them do their work, they have to really be entering data and starting at the point of in their planning. All that has to be set up before they kind of get to this place where they can begin to analyze their data and make data-informed decisions around their students.
Correct. So like as Gretchen mentioned, like the importance of the baseline, setting the baselines and the targets, but then if you look now at Matilda Test, who doesn't have any progress for first grading period or second grading period and no latest progress. So now when we go to do our analysis, we can't include her in the analysis to really know whether or not she's improving or not because we haven't entered anything. So this is really highlighting the importance of putting in the data in a timely manner so that, you know, different time points you can go in and run an analysis to see where you should make improvements.
With your students?
With your specific students, correct.
Wow. Thank you.
And that's why we are working so hard to make the system more efficient with those sorts of time-saving features that I mentioned before.
Awesome.
Great. So to continue with our analysis here, so we would like to focus just on the students who are not progressing towards their goals, and of course for the students that we have data for right now. Ideally, we would go in and enter the data that's missing, but for now, we'll focus on the data that we have. So now we'll see this is filtered now just for the students who are declining. And so I'll pause here and just throw it to the group and just consider it's the middle of the year and you want to see how students are progressing against their attendance goals. If this is the data that you have, what questions might you ask about the data to dig deeper or to plan, et cetera? And feel free to use the chat box as well.
So, all of you out there in boot camp world, I want y'all to make me look like I've been doing a great job of engaging you all and respond to the question in the chat box, at least one or two of you. I don't know if you're ever at the national office. There may be some coffee to go with that. So, you know, let's see who responds first.
Staring at the chat box.
So as you guys are putting your question, one question came directly to the national office, to me. Are students in specific grades struggling more in a goal area? So that is a great question. So as you see, like this report doesn't include the grade area, but we'll be talking about other reports that include that additional information that you can use to answer that specific question. So great question.
Anybody else? I think I'm out of incentives, though.
No. I feel like there's too much pressure now. No pressure.
No pressure.
Send us an answer.
There might be a delay, so we might just continue to go forward and, you know, they'll come in. I'm sure someone will jump in. I'm sure one of you will jump in. Go ahead.
Another good question. Are students struggling more with coming on time or coming at all? Which is a good question, because if you look at the data, the metrics, there's attendance rate and there's tardies, and one is indicative of the students are not coming on time, and another one is saying, well, the students aren't coming at all, which would be two different issues, and the approach to addressing it will be different, or could be different. So, good question. So we'll keep going. Wait, one.
Uh-oh, here we go. Thank you. And forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Adonica. I would first look at the attendance for my caseload and look at if what I am doing is moving the needles, kind of macro.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think that it is spot on, and some of the additional reports that we'll look at will kind of highlight, well, what is happening school-wide, and so which will show like what kind of supports is the site coordinator implementing or providing or brokering school-wide. So that is spot on.
Great. Thank you, Adonica.
So next we will look at the number of hours.
You pronounced it correctly.
Great. So we'll dig a little deeper. So we asked a couple questions like what is missing, what is this data telling us, and based on some of the questions that were raised, specifically, you know, around the grade levels and supports that are offered, it makes sense to run additional reports to find those answers. So the second report that we'll look at will provide that for us. So back on the reports and summary dashboard in the report section, there's the tier 2 and 3 supports by provider report that we'll run to find out what are the supports that are being offered. So this report includes the support category, the support name, the activity, and then total number of supports and hours provided at the school level. And if we're focusing on just attendance, we might want to only highlight the supports that we've directly tied to either student plan supports or school level plan supports that are geared towards improving attendance. So in this case, let's say that we have linked behavioral interventions, modifications, attendance rate monitoring to improving attendance. So we see here, the Tier 2 and 3 supports report shows us that we have provided 12 attendance monitoring supports at the individual level for 12 hours total. So knowing that we have students who are struggling in this area, we would be looking to see what the students' participation looks like for this tiered support. One thing I wanted to note before I move on is that this report is run by provider type, meaning like was it delivered by CIS staff, by a community partner. So if we had more than one attendance monitoring delivered by different provider types, you might see additional rows of data. So, for example, bullying, violence, and prevention was probably delivered by CIS staff, community partners, and maybe a volunteer, so it's on there 3 times. So I would filter by support name and then sum up the total number of tiered supports and tiered hours to kind of show like the cumulative aggregate number of supports provided.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So making sure, so if there were 12 inputs, right, so that means that the site coordinator did 12 inputs within a certain time frame, and it demonstrates some diligence on behalf of the site coordinator. Best practice around kind of being diligent about inputs that you all have seen in the network, like, you know, what are some strategies or some kind of best practices that they're using to make sure that they're diligent around getting data in and using their time wisely? You know, who's doing it well, who have you heard from that's not, maybe not
Not
who.
to call out names.
Don't call names, but like.
You know who really doesn't.
But like, what are some of the things that you've seen that you've heard have helped people to really get this level of information that you really need to be able to make those data-informed decisions?
Do you want to say anything?
Well, I think, like, I was going to say, if you wanted to talk about the batch, like, support entry, which is useful as well, and then you definitely have, Gretchen's been here way longer than me. I'm sure she will have.
Yeah, so I really think that doing things in batch is just going to make it quicker for people, no matter when they're putting data in, so they don't have to do things for every individual student. And we have an importing feature, too. Not to plug that.
So when you say batch, you mean,
yeah.
like, you can do multiple students at the same time.
Yeah.
Got
Say like, oh, there was this group activity, 4 kids came.
Got it.
So it just makes it a little quicker. But I know that some people take kind of notes throughout the week if they don't have a laptop or a tablet that they can kind of carry around through the school day. It does make it a little more difficult to get the data into system as frequently, so they just kind of take notes and then it reminds them later to do it. Some people, especially because I know you're at a school and you get interrupted a lot by students, whether it's a crisis or they just love seeing you, they're just going to come in and it might be harder to use your computer at all, really. So some people do need to block off time where it might even be off campus so that there aren't those interruptions. Some affiliates try to do at their central office, like on a Friday afternoon, a data entry, I guess, party or whatever it happens to be, to kind of get all the site coordinators together. We're all kind of putting in information so that it doesn't get lost. Because, yeah, the longer you wait, then it's going to be more overwhelming to do data entry to begin with. It's going to take longer and you might forget things. So as frequent as people can put it in, that's really the best practice.
Thank you.
Good question. Right. So we have, so just to recap, so we have our list of students who we are focusing on because they're not progressing or declining against their attendance goals. And now we've run the Tier 2 and 3 supports by provider report to show the support that we really wanted to focus on, which is attendance monitoring, to know that we've offered 12 supports for 12 hours. So with that information, we're going to move forward to then evaluate what does student participation look like in those supports, being the attendance monitoring. So to do so there's a question in the chat box.
Great, awesome. Dr. Claudette Harrell says, are data based upon actual performance measures of estimations?
If you're referring to things like the metric information, it should be based on the performance of the students for that particular metric. So, for example, like the number of tardies in that grading period. So some of the data entry might be delayed based on when you can get the information from your schools. They may not consider the grades official until like 3 weeks after the quarter ended or however it kind of lines up there. So it should be based on the grading periods and what information is coming out of either the school system or report cards, however you happen to get it for those students.
And so some of them probably may be fortunate enough to have access to whatever the school system's kind of data system is, whether it's Power School or whatever, and they can have real-time data.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's great when site coordinators can have access to that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. So we will go back to the reports and summary dashboard in system, and we'll run the student support detail report, which is going to provide us student-level information about the supports that students are receiving. So the student support detail report is going to provide student information, as I mentioned, including individual or group supports, the number of hours of each support, and then additional supports or case notes. All of that will be on the Excel export. I've removed some of the columns just to fit on the screen, but definitely more information is available on the export. So based on the information that we gathered from the Tier 2 and 3 supports report that we previously ran, I've added another column here in orange. This column is taking the total number of student hours and dividing by the total number of hours of the support. So if we look specifically at Maddie Green and Annabelle Johnson, where it says 8%, that's basically just dividing the 1 hour divided by the 12 hours provided, just saying this is like the level of engagement or participation or, you know, frequency that we've been meeting with these students.
Dosage.
Dosage, as that is a great word, dosage. So, yeah, so this could indicate a number of things. So it might raise more questions. You might cause you to want to dig deeper to run additional reports to get more information about, you know, how engaged are these students or how many supports are these students receiving, and are they receiving the correct number of supports. So the data is not conclusive, but it could shed light, again, on different improvements. So if we focus just on the students who are not progressing against their goals, we see that Maddie and Annabelle are the only two who are receiving attendance monitoring based on this report. Petunia, who was also one of our students who was declining, didn't receive any supports at all in this area in the first half of the school year. And Teresa, who is not on the report at all, didn't receive any supports in any area in the first half. So depending on caseload sizes, managing student supports and ensuring that students do not fall through the cracks can be a task. You know, as Gretchen mentioned, the day is moving and students are popping in all of the time, but really setting aside the time to make sure that you're evaluating and monitoring progress and supports and data throughout the school year. So this data raises a few additional questions. So are these students receiving the appropriate dosage of support? Are students receiving supports targeted towards their set goals and needs? So for Petunia, yes, she is receiving supports, but if we really want her to improve in attendance, then we should ensure that we're providing those supports to reach that goal. And then are there students who are missing out on support opportunities that are available? So some of the additional questions that might be raised from the data as you run your reports. So one thing that we wanted to kind of provide was a data tip, because our example data is very clean, I guess.
And totally fake.
And totally fake. So sometimes when you run reports, like the student support detail report, when you go to sum up or add up the number of supports in an area, it could be kind of messy if students have multiple rows of the same support. So I kind of duplicated the data to try to recreate that scenario here. So we have Maddie Green, who instead of having just one row of attendance monitoring, she now has 3 on 3 different days. So we want to be able to create a table that just shows 1 row per student and tells us how many supports in an area and how many hours of that support. So the easy solution to this is just running a quick pivot table. So that's what we wanted to quickly walk through. So in Excel, once you run the summary, it comes out in Excel and you have the raw data. What you should do is you should highlight the entire table, as I have done here, all of the data. And then in Excel, there's a tab called Insert. And in that section, you're going to click on Pivot Table.
Got it.
And this is going to create a pivot of all the data that you have now highlighted. Once you click on Pivot Table, a window will pop up asking you, is this the correct range? Yes. Do you want it in a new worksheet? Yes. Just click OK. Once you do that, a new window will appear. And on the left side is where you're going to build. So it says to build a report, choose the fields. On the right side of the screen is where you will then choose the fields to recreate a new table so that you can analyze the data. So the finished product will look like this. And I'm going to walk through the steps to get to this point. So we know the finished product is we want all of our student names once. Mm-hmm. We want the count of their tiered supports, and we want the sum of all the hours by support for whether it's attendance or all of their support categories.
That's what you've selected. Because you could select other things, right?
That's what I've selected.
Yes.
So just based on like the example that we went through today, if we wanted to recreate this for more students, we could use a pivot table, which is going to make it more clean for us to analyze the data.
It looks great.
Thank you. So to create this, the first thing that we would want to do is pull the student names. So at the top section where all the fields are, I would click on student and then drag it down to the rows box.
Easy.
Got it.
Then I would next grab the support name. This is going to go at the top as a filter so that we can select attendance, bullying, whatever the support category is. And I'm going to grab the support name and I'm going to pull it down into the filter box because this is what I want to filter by. And then I'm going to also grab tier and hours individually and drag them down to the values section.
Okay.
That is going to cause this table to be created. As you're dragging them down, you'll see it's building as you're populating. Correct. And then, so right now what this table is showing us is that Maddie has 4 tiered supports, 4 hours. Annabelle has 3 for 3 hours across all support areas. But we're only interested in attendance.
Got it. Okay, we have a question. Before anyone gets anxious, I want you to know that this is being recorded. And if you want to go back and kind of go through the steps, it'll be available on CISU, so you kind of can go back and go through that. So, but I think this is amazing, and I think it'll, you'll be able to, if you aren't already doing this in your affiliate, you'll definitely be able to add some value and kind of create some efficiency in your affiliate.
I will pause for questions after this. I just don't want to stop and let people lose their train of thought.
Let me get back to Donique, and then we'll come back to your question, Dr. Harrell.
Yeah, so the last step is right now it's showing for all supports, and we just want to see attendance. So the last step would be to come up to where it says support name all and click the drop down, and then we would just select attendance monitoring, and this table will repopulate with only the data for attendance monitoring. Then we can kind of see, what the dosage is for attendance monitoring by student.
Great.
And so then I will pause there, and I think to get the question that was in the chat box.
Right. See, the presenters have to moderate the moderators. All right. So the question is, are site supervisors trained on performance measures in order to establish indicators, efficiency measures, effective methods, demands for service, and how actual outcomes are measured before entering data into the spreadsheets?
Well, I think this really kind of just depends on the affiliate, if you will, or state or local network. Some program directors or other people at the affiliate are very data savvy and know how to use system really well and know how to measure outcomes really well. And actually what I think is really helpful too is having a number of years worth of data to be able to look at your own local information and use that to inform what you would consider a positive outcome or what things you want to measure and what programs have been effective and things like that. I feel like we really need to have that local information to support it. But, and I mean, for our part, we of course try to make sure that everybody is trained at the very basic level on SISDM, and any time that affiliates are able to kind of go above and beyond that and they want to talk more about specific analysis or evaluations or things like that, we're more than happy to have those conversations. But throughout a network of our size, of course, people are all at different levels, and including the site coordinators. Some may have avoided Excel at all costs because numbers made them nervous, and some people are like, oh, I've been running pivot tables for years.
Yeah.
So
run them in my sleep.
I feel like it's kind of like a bigger conversation about that, but we would certainly be willing to have those kinds of conversations with your particular local group if you are interested, talking more about like performance measures and stuff.
Are there any opportunities to engage with you all, that regular opportunities that you all want to like share maybe, that the network engages with you all, that are open and not like closed to specific groups?
Got it.
Well, in general, we do have office hours on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And those, it kind of just depends on what topics we're discussing that day. A lot of it is specific to SISDM and new features or glitches that we're aware of, or questions that people have to demonstrate certain things. But if people are interested in having higher level kind of like discussions about those kinds of topics that are not specific to SISDM itself, because again, SISDM is just a tool to use to help track and process the data. But yeah, so everybody's at least welcome to, well, the data admins, I guess, should be like kind of overseeing that process for your local affiliate. But.
The reason why I'm reading this question maybe a little bit differently, because I think the question might be also that this is some very heavy information for site coordinators, for some site coordinators, and it's going to be important that there is that communication is available at all levels, so that they can be speaking the same language. And and so she asked about supervisors, site supervisors, so not just site coordinators, but those who are supervising site, and to make sure that everybody's on the same page with regards to this kind of detailed level of information and approach to the work. So I think that what we can do at the site coordinator level is like maybe kind of help them, give them some tools to manage up maybe and some training, but also we want to make sure that the supervisors, program directors, executive directors are, you know, being able to touch this information in a certain way also.
And I mean, we had the, what the program director's boot camp was, whenever that was, and I kind of did a different focus, but this kind of presentation with them. So yeah, we do talk at different levels of what seems relevant to that group. When it comes to data tracking and reporting and usage, data culture can be built from managing up and also kind of filtering down. So I don't want to put everything on the affiliates or saying that you can only do what your affiliates encourage you to do. That's actually why we chose this particular thing. It might be, some people, again, are not as comfortable with Excel or computers or data, so they might think it sounds complicated, but we actually think that this is the perfect thing for a site coordinator to do at the local level. And it doesn't involve like running statistics and looking across all schools to see if students are doing better against other students that don't have CIS or anything that's like too over the top, or so I actually think that the site coordinators, you also have kind of the extra context that you need to look at these because you know your caseload. So if a program director or some other affiliate or even state level person was trying to run these reports, they would just get out the numbers and just look at this compared to this and be able to kind of do that basic comparison. But you might already know why Matilda Test didn't have any data in because she left 2 weeks after she came to CIS and you forgot to exit her or something like that. So we do want to encourage the site coordinators to be looking at their own data in this way.
Great.
Sorry, kind of like
that's why this is an enhancement webinar, right? We have the course and then there's enhancement. That's what this is.
So just to kind of wrap up, we wanted to talk a little bit about quality data tracking and how that leads to informative reporting, which we've talked a bit about already. So this is just the recap of that, but the importance of setting aside time for timely data entry of the basic needs and all the tiered supports, and then utilizing the batch entry that Gretchen mentioned to enter multiple supports at a time to be able to do that more efficiently and just make sure that you're capturing all the students who receive their supports. and then running supports and summaries to analyze student progress and monitoring participation and effectiveness of the supports that have been offered, utilizing the reports in SysDem and all of the summaries and kind of cross-referencing data to tell a story. So we wanted to pause again for a little bit of group chat in the chat box. To talk about what makes a data system useful. Based on everything that you've heard, questions that have already arisen in the chat box, if users could provide, or if those on the call could provide examples of data being useful to you in your school, your support team, how you've used it, and best practices for using SysDem.
Yep. So first thing I want to do a time check.
Yep.
We have about 13 or 14 minutes left total. Okay, cool. Want to give you all out there an opportunity to respond to this, examples of data being useful to you. And thank you all for being so engaged thus far and asking questions and commenting. So please feel free to type into the chat box about how data has been useful to you, your school, your support team, principal, affiliate, but also best practices for a system. So, so thank you for your engagement and responses. And I want to hear from someone other than Adonica this time. But you can respond to Adonica. I'm not saying I want to hear from somebody else in addition to you.
And I want to say, I mean, if it's okay, Sarah, if they have questions about anything else, could they use this time as well?
Sure, definitely. If you have questions, and the questions have been great too, so if you have questions, please put those into the chat box also so that we can, while we have them right here as a resource, please ask your questions. Oh, here we go. So when you talk about data, are you referring to data from SysDem?
That's a good question.
I was thinking not necessarily.
I'd say not necessarily.
Got it.
I think that there are external data that might come from the district or the school that you might use to inform the data that you're putting into SysDem or the story that you're getting out of SysDem.
Mm-hmm. Right, and as you're developing your, school support plan, there's different places where you're going to get data from, right? It won't necessarily come from SysDem. Is there another one? Data serve as accountability for resources incoming and outcomes produced.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Accountability for resources.
Yeah. It helps. I'm always bringing that up. So I'm always bringing up what are the outcomes that we're looking for. And if you're talking about outcomes, you have to be talking about baselines. You have to be talking, so this is definitely true. It's like, how did you make a difference? What did you do with your time? Did you really make a difference? So
yeah, people want to know if CIS is a good investment, both like time, money, other sorts of resources. And if we're like truly helping students, so this is the way we can figure it out is if we have numbers to back it up.
Right.
So.
And I know a lot of times we have affiliates that want to be able to pull specific data out of the system because it's tied to a specific funder. So the data does need to be entered in order to pull it out and enter correctly so that they can pull it out.
Exactly. So great comment. Any other comments or questions? Oh, here's another one. I have access to school data such as attendance. Great. However, my school just became the 17th high school in my county. I was able to show my principal attendance data he was not familiar with, and that has been helpful. That's interesting.
That is interesting. So are you referring to like attendance data specifically to the students at the school, like because the data wasn't available yet? And can they unmute if they want to?
Maybe.
Might be easier to
I
talk
feel like
than
we
to.
can.
It might be easier to talk than
Her
to chat.
audio's not hooked up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
The reason why I asked this question, there's a clarifying question that I think will be helpful for Gretchen and Donique, is because my assumption is that the principal would have access to the information before you do.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Right, yeah.
so,
Or
and I'm just wondering, maybe we're misinterpreting the question
Or the comment.
or the comment, because typically whatever system you have access to, the principal will have access to that same system. Or you could actually be saying that the principal is not using or accessing the system that you have access to, which is possible also. So we just want to get some clarification before, they take a shot at, kind of commenting on it. Okay. He has asked it, but was not familiar with that particular report. Exactly. So, how do you want
I
to?
didn't read
But this is Patty, right?
Yeah, I was reading Patty. Well, I mean, we can, yeah, so I think that's a great example, Donica. And then Patty has a question. Can we pull data around how often a certain partner is used to help us determine if they are truly needed? That's a good point. Does anybody do that? Has anyone done that already?
So around dosage and impact,
Mhm.
can you do dosage and impact work?
So and I hesitate to, because this, the data that you're putting into the system, hopefully it is accurate, and there's a lot of ways that you could analyze data, and if you're somebody who is familiar with statistics and actually runs like those, then you might be able to make like a stronger link between the two. So I just hesitate to say that there's anything official that because these 3 students got these supports, that's why they met their attendance goal.
Mm-hmm.
But you can at least see the trend there, and kind of have a good argument for what you're doing, leading to a positive impact. And what else was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. So.
Well, you were talking about hesitancy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't want to make it an official, like saying that, like this is any kind of like official evaluation, that if students have a certain dosage and they're meeting their goals, that's exactly the reason why. But looking at the different types of supports that students are receiving, and like Patty mentioned, maybe if there are certain partners that are providing supports that don't seem to be particularly useful, or if there's partners that don't do a whole lot in the school and other ones may be better, or they're not really needed with what our goals are. Talking to the principal about what happened last year and the different information that you can pull from system, school-wide and individual case managed students, to kind of talk about what the goals should be this year, and if things are really being done well, if the partners are effective, if students are receiving what they need. Maybe if there are different needs in the school than the principal is even really aware of, because doing your different your needs assessment at the beginning of the year and talking to different stakeholders can really bring a lot of things to light that may not have been on his radar, his or her radar. So now I'm going on a tangent again, but basically there's all this stuff that you can do with data. Talk about it all day.
Well, we're getting close to time, and I definitely don't. I definitely don't want. No, we don't go over. We start on time, we finish on time.
I like that.
But, so if there are any other lingering questions or comments, go ahead and put those in the chat box. We got about 5 minutes of a window. You don't necessarily have to use it, but if you have lingering questions or comments that you want to ask our presenters today, feel free to enter them into the chat box.
I guess I'd be interested, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being, like, definitely confident, and if I understand it's a chat box, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but on how confident or comfortable you feel with being able to run the multiple reports and to use them.
That's great.
How ready you feel.
That's great.
I guess.
Let's get some real-time data. So tell us, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel in running the reports that were discussed today? Come on, let's get some numbers going. let's see, anybody?
And if you don't want to vote, that's okay. But maybe if there's a reason that you feel like lower on the scale, coming in with like maybe a clarifying question or a request for more information in a specific area, 6 is good.
Yeah.
6 is not bad, yeah.
6 is good.
And because I really think that depending, again, on your local network, a lot of emphasis has been placed on kind of data to use just at the affiliate level, maybe at the school level, but more by like site supervisors, program directors. So I think that site coordinators may not have thought that this was part of their daily work or useful to them. They might have stayed away from the reporting area because they weren't sure what was in there. But honestly, just play around. Like running a report isn't going to hurt anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're not changing any data. Once you export it to Excel and try out the pivot tables and realize you might have done it wrong, like no harm done. Just, you could rerun it. You could just clear out that, just take away that tab from the pivot table. So I want people to be able to feel like they can play around with it.
Right.
Just like look into it, start getting familiar with the reports as a first step if you're on the lower end of the 1 to 10 range.
And then for us, like we're interested in knowing like what are the topic areas that we can provide more guidance or support around to try to move everyone closer to the 8, 9, 10s.
Yeah.
So like really like an ask for us, like to help us know, what type of instruction can we provide.
And so the other thing is that being able to do this adds so much more value to you in the building, and being able to use this information to really, first of all, inform the school support plan, but to make pivots throughout the year and data inform changes throughout the year, and to be a resource. So like, people want to do the right things, and some people they don't want to waste time, doing things that feel good but don't necessarily make change. So having these types of skills and strategies, I think will help. We have another comment question. As a new VISTA member, I have not had the opportunity yet to work with the spreadsheet. However, I work with performance indicator spreadsheets and budgets for over 20 years, so I feel comfortable working with such documents. It sounds like it. You're saying all the right words.
Asking all the right questions.
Right. That's awesome. And that's a value, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of those skills are transferable and will definitely make you a valuable asset to the school. So.
Yeah. All right. We're right at time. It's only 2 minutes left, so I have a few minutes to close out. But I wanted to first of all, thank you all. I know you're in the school, so some of you may be in school, so thank you for taking out the time of your day that you're working with young people to sharpen your sword and to get better and to do this work, and for joining this boot camp webinar. And also want to give a special thank you to our presenters today, both Gretchen and Donique, for doing a wonderful job, not only for just presenting today, but the preparation that goes into putting something together that's really useful for you all. So just really want to thank them. Just wanted to let you know that many other opportunities are available on CISU, so just explore CISU and continue to grow and develop as a professional. I mentioned before that the materials or the recording from today's session will be available in the next couple of days. I would say early next week. Go back if you want to re-watch it and maybe share it with your colleagues. It'll be up on CISU. We encourage you to go to Yammer and continue the conversation there. So if you have questions that you want to ask Donique or Gretchen, feel free to put those questions there, or for myself. We'll be happy to engage with you there at the Yammer group, so this conversation doesn't stop. That's all I have for today. Remember that 90-day post, we're going to have a survey, and folks are going to be following up with you to kind of check on your experience through this. So we just want to make sure we're continuing to provide, the type of opportunities that help you to continue to do well at your job. So thank you all again, and I'm going to stay on. We usually stay on for a couple of minutes. Some people, if you have a lingering question, feel free. I'll put some music on, and we'll stick around for just a couple minutes as people exit in case there are other questions that you might have. But thank you again. And guess what? Next week is the last week. 2 o'clock. We start on time. Thursday, we're going to do partnerships. We have the folks from Chicago that are going to come in and talk to us about partnerships. So hope to see you next week, 2 o'clock. So we're going back to our regular time next week at 2 o'clock. I'll send out the controls. Want to see you then. Let's finish strong. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the video off, though.
Oh, bye.